My son called the police to report me dead. While I was sitting in his garage, my son reported me dead at 7:18 in the morning. At 7:42, the police knocked on the garage door to check the body. I was sitting inside, drinking coffee from a plastic cup, wearing the gray robe my daughter-in-law said made me look easier to care for. That was Melissa's gift. She could insult a man and make it sound like a care plan. The knock came again. 3 hard hits against the metal garage door. Not the front door, not the side door. The garage door. That told me 2 things before I ever stood up. 1, my son had told them exactly where to find me. 2, he had not wanted them walking through the house first. Smart. Cowardly, but smart. At 73 years old, you learn to measure humiliation in small household objects. A plastic cup instead of a mug. A paper plate instead of a dish. A pill organizer with someone else's handwriting on the labels. A hospital bed beside a stack of paint cans. A locked kitchen door 10 feet away from the home you paid for. And now, apparently, 2 police officers standing outside because your only son had filed you under dead before breakfast. "Mr. Grant?" a man called. "Police department." I looked at the inside door that led from the garage into the kitchen. Locked. Melissa had started locking it 2 weeks earlier. She said it was because I wandered at night. I had not wandered at night since I was 21 and drunk outside a pool hall in 1973. But confused old men are useful. Dead ones are better. I reached for my cane, pushed myself upright, and waited for the pain in my hip to finish making its argument. Pain is not dramatic when you are old. It negotiates. It says, "We can do this, Arthur, but you are going to pay interest." I crossed the concrete floor slowly. The garage smelled of motor oil, laundry detergent, and the kind of neglect families call temporary when they are still trying to sleep at night. I lifted the latch. 2 officers stood in the driveway. The older one had tired eyes and a wedding ring. The younger one had her hand near her belt and a face too careful for a routine call. Behind them sat a cruiser. Across the street, Mrs. Palmer's curtains were already open. Good. Let the neighborhood watch. People are less comfortable lying when curtains are involved. The older officer looked at me, then past me. Hospital bed, plastic cup, pill bottles, folded walker, laundry basket, old paint cans, then back to me. His expression changed. "Not much. Enough." "Are you Arthur Grant?" he asked. "I was when I woke up." The younger officer glanced at her clipboard. Her name tag said Redding. My hand tightened around the cane before my face had permission to react. Redding. For most men, a name is just a name. For me, it was a body in a ditch 29 years ago. A man named Carl Redding, a mechanic, a father, a life I helped turn into paperwork. The young officer looked up. "Sir, we received a report that you were deceased." I stared at her badge. Redding. Then at my son's house. Then at the locked door behind me. Then at the 2 officers, waiting for a dead man to explain himself. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes life puts the knife in so cleanly you have to admire the hand. "My son," I said, "called the police to report me dead while I was sitting in his garage." The older officer introduced himself as Detective Harlan. The younger one was Officer June Redding. Of course, her name was June. Carl Redding had 2 daughters, Marcy and June. Marcy was 11 when he died. June was 5. I remembered because the file had contained a photograph of them standing beside their father at a county fair. Both girls holding cotton candy, both smiling like the world was still legally required to be kind. I had buried that photograph in a report box. Then I buried the report. Then I called it finished. The dead are patient. That is what I have learned. They may wait decades, but they eventually find a door. Daniel came running out of the front door before Officer Redding could ask why her name had landed on me like a bullet. My son, 48 years old, barefoot, shirt half-buttoned, face pale in that soft, useless way his face always got when consequences arrived before he had time to prepare an apology. "Dad," he said. He looked at the officers, then at me, then back at the officers. That was Daniel's problem in one movement. He never knew which lie needed him most. "Officers," he said, breathless. "There's been a misunderstanding." Detective Harlan turned. "Are you Daniel Grant?" "Yes, I'm his son. You reported your father deceased." Daniel's mouth opened, closed, opened again. It wasn't like that. That sentence should be printed on the family crest of cowards. I leaned on my cane. Go ahead, Daniel. Tell us what kind of dead you meant. His eyes flashed at me. Not anger. Fear pretending to be hurt. Dad, you know you've been confused. There it was. Confused. The first shovel of dirt. Officer Redding looked at me. Have you been confused, sir? Yes, I said. For about 12 seconds after Detective Harlan told me my only child had filed me under corpse. Daniel's jaw tightened. Dad, please. No, we're past please. Please was before you moved my bed next to the weed killer. Officer Redding wrote something down. Daniel noticed. His panic sharpened. My father had a serious fall. He's on medication. He's been saying things, forgetting things. My wife and I were trying to get him help. By reporting him dead? I asked. Daniel looked at Detective Harlan. I didn't report him dead. I called because we received a notice that his benefits had been marked inactive. I thought there had been some kind of paperwork error. I asked for a welfare check. Detective Harlan looked down at his phone. That is not what dispatch notes say. Daniel went still. Good. I had spent 36 years as a county death investigator, not a coroner, not a cop, something between the two. The man who showed up when a body created paperwork that did not match the story people wanted to tell. I had seen brothers cry over men they had killed, wives faint beside husbands they had poisoned slowly, sons stand in kitchens pretending not to know how their fathers wound up at the bottom of stairs. Everyone thinks criminals look different after they cross the line. They do not. They look mostly the same. A little tired, a little offended, and very surprised that the paperwork remembers more than they do. Daniel looked exactly like that now. Then the front door opened again. Melissa appeared, my daughter-in-law, pressed white blouse, dark pants, hair smooth enough to look legally represented. Melissa could walk into a burning building and make the fire feel underdressed. She came down the porch steps with practiced concern. Arthur, she said, why are you outside without your slippers? Not Dad, not Mr. Grant Arthur. She had started using my first name after my fall. Said it helped me feel less dependent. That was Melissa's gift. She could reduce you and call it empowerment. Melissa, I said, the police are here because your husband misplaced my pulse. Her eyes moved to the officers, then to Daniel. Something passed between them. Fast, not surprise. Coordination. That was the first honest answer of the morning. Detective Harlan saw it too. Good man. Tired eyes, but not lazy ones. Mrs. Grant, he said, we need to clarify who initiated the report. Melissa folded her arms gently, the way women like her do when they want authority without aggression. Detective, Arthur has been declining since his accident. We've been under enormous pressure. Answer him, I said. She looked at me with pity. I had learned to hate pity more than anger. Anger at least respects your ability to fight back. Arthur, she said softly, this is exactly what we're worried about. Officer Redding stepped forward. What are you worried about? Melissa took a breath. My father-in-law has become paranoid. He believes we're trying to harm him. I said you were trying to bury me on paper, I said. There's a difference. Harm is messy. Paper is patient. Daniel closed his eyes. Melissa's face tightened for half a second. A crack in the porcelain. Then Detective Harlan asked, Mr. Grant, do you have identification? Yes. Can you get it? I looked at the locked door. My wallet is in the house. Daniel moved too fast. I'll get it. No, Harlan said. Simple, firm, beautiful word. No. The kind Daniel had never learned to use with his wife. The detective looked at me. Sir, is there another way inside? I pointed to the side gate. Back door. Unless they changed that lock too. Melissa laughed once. A small laugh. Professional mistake. Officer Redding heard it. So did I. The five of us walked around the side of the house. I moved slowly. Daniel kept trying to help me. I kept letting him fail with his hands in the air. We entered through the back door into my kitchen. My kitchen did not look like my kitchen anymore. The coffee maker had been moved. Evelyn's copper pan was gone from above the stove. My mail tray had disappeared. The family photos on the sideboard had been replaced with a glass bowl full of green apples. Nobody in that house ate green apples. Green apples are not food. They are real estate staging with skin. Detective Harlan asked, "Where is your wallet, Mr. Grant?" "Top drawer of the desk in the den." Melissa said quickly, "We moved some things for safety." I looked at her. Safety has been very busy. We went to the den, or what used to be my den. Daniel's laptop sat on my desk. Melissa's folders filled my bookshelf. My old leather chair had been pushed into the corner with a blanket over it, like a disgraced relative. Harlan opened the top drawer. "No wallet." Daniel said, "He loses things." I said, "Only faith in family." Harlan opened the second drawer. Still nothing. Then I noticed the edge of a blue folder under Daniel's laptop. Not mine. Melissa moved first. Too fast. "I can get his wallet from upstairs." Officer Redding stepped into her path. "Mom, stay here." Melissa froze. I reached for the folder. Daniel said, "Dad, don't." There it was again. The oldest confession in the world. Don't. Not because you're wrong. Because you're close. I opened the folder. Inside was a copy of my driver's license, my Medicare card, my Social Security card, a hospital discharge summary, a handwritten log of my episodes, and clipped to the front one printed document with the words, "Preliminary Death Notification Request." The room went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. There is a difference. Silence is empty. Quiet is full of things people are too afraid to say. Detective Harlan took the folder from my hand. His face changed line by line as he read. Melissa said, "That's not what it looks like." I almost admired her. That sentence, under the right conditions, could survive a murder scene. Harlan looked at Daniel. "What is this?" Daniel said nothing. Melissa said, "It was an online form. We were trying to correct an error. By preparing death notification documents, my husband misunderstood what the benefits office needed." I looked at Daniel. "Did you?" He stared at the floor. Daniel had always found the floor more forgiving than people. Officer Redding turned a page. "There's a physician statement attached." That got my attention. "What physician?" She read the name. "Dr. Malcolm Voss." I smiled. Then I laughed again. This time I meant it. Daniel flinched. Melissa did not understand why yet she would. Dr. Malcolm Voss had signed a death-adjacent document for me. That was bold. Stupid, but bold. Malcolm Voss and I had history. Not medical history. The other kind. 29 years earlier, I had saved that man from prison. Not because he was innocent. Because my son was not. Officer Redding looked at me. "You know him?" "Yes," I said. Melissa's face tightened. Daniel whispered, "Dad." That whisper had age in it. Not 48 years. 29. It came from a boy on a porch with blood on a red Mustang. I turned to Officer Redding. "Do you know a man named Carl Redding?" Her face changed before she could stop it. Harlan looked at her. "June?" She did not look at him. She looked at me. That was my father. There it was. The past had entered the room wearing a badge. Daniel sat down. Hard. Melissa finally understood that the name in her little dementia notes was not an abstract weapon. It had daughters, and one of them was standing in my den. I should have stopped. A decent man might have stopped. But decent men do not spend 29 years breathing through a buried crime and then get to choose timing. "My attorney," I said to Detective Harlan. "I need to call him." Melissa stepped forward. "Arthur, no, you need rest." I looked at her. "My dear, I spent 36 years reading death reports written by people who needed rest. I can tell the difference." Detective Harlan asked, "Do you feel unsafe here, Mr. Grant?" Daniel whispered again. "Dad." I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I taught to ride a bike in the street outside, the boy whose mother spent 3 weeks sewing a dragon costume because he cried when the store was out of his size, the man who had moved me into a garage, locked the kitchen door, and put my death into draft form. "Yes," I said. Daniel's face broke. "Good. Let it." Some things have to break before they stop being useful as lies. The officers did not arrest anyone that morning. Real life is rude that way. It rarely gives you handcuffs when you want them. They filed a report called Adult Protective Services, took photos of the garage, copied the folder, asked questions. Melissa answered like a woman auditioning for innocence, and Daniel answered like a man hoping fog was a legal strategy. Before leaving, Detective Harlan gave me his card. "Call me if anything else happens." "It already happened," he said. I know, he said. Call me when you're ready to prove it. Officer Redding stayed one moment longer. She stood at the edge of the den, looking at me with a face that was no longer careful. You asked about my father, she said. Yes. Why? I looked at Daniel, then at Melissa, then at the blue folder. Because I think he just got tired of being dead wrong. She did not understand, but she would. By noon, the house had changed temperature. Not literally. Melissa kept the thermostat at 72 because she believed comfort should be measurable and controlled. But the air was different, thinner, sharper. The way a room feels after glass breaks, even if you cleaned every piece. Daniel followed me to the kitchen. Dad, I didn't know about that form. I poured coffee into a real mug. My hand shook. I let it. Some tremors are evidence too. You knew enough. I thought Melissa was trying to fix the benefits issue. What benefits issue? He rubbed his face. That exhausted gesture. Daniel always looked tired when lying required structure. Your Social Security got flagged after the hospital. She said there was a system problem. And you believed her. I wanted to. That was almost honest. Almost. You always want to believe the version that asks least of you. He looked wounded. At 48 years old, my son could still look like a child accused of taking cookies. It worked better when he was 6. Dad, you don't understand the pressure we're under. I set the mug down. There it is. The national anthem of people about to ask an old man for his house. His eyes filled. Don't do that. Do what? Talk like I'm some monster. You're not a monster, Daniel. He looked relieved. Poor fool. I continued. Monsters know what they are doing. You're worse. You outsource your cruelty to whoever is willing to act, while you stand nearby feeling conflicted. He stepped back. That one found bone. Melissa entered the kitchen holding her phone. All right, she said, voice calm, too calm. We need to stop escalating this. We? Yes, we. This is a family medical situation. No, I said. It became a police situation at 7:42. She looked at Daniel. Your father is not well. My father, I said, is about to call the attorney your mother never liked because he charged by the minute and never blinked. I reached for the landline. Melissa's hand landed on the receiver. Not hard, just enough. That was her mistake. People like Melissa confuse age with permission. I looked at her hand, then at her. Remove it. She did, slowly. I dialed from memory. Leonard Price answered on the 4th ring. Price. Lenny, it's Arthur Grant. A pause. Then his voice changed. My God, you are alive. I smiled. Now we were getting somewhere. Apparently that's in dispute. I received paperwork this morning. Melissa went pale. Daniel stopped breathing. I kept my eyes on both of them. What paperwork? A notification from your son, requesting emergency estate review due to your passing. The kitchen vanished for a moment, not physically, emotionally. The room was still there, but something underneath it opened. My passing, not potential death, not confusion, passing. I looked at Daniel. His mouth trembled. He said, Dad, I swear. I held up one finger. He stopped. Small miracle. Lenny, I said, who signed it? A rustle of paper. Then Lenny said, Daniel's name appears on the request. Daniel shook his head. Melissa stared at the floor. Lenny continued, but the attached physician's statement is from Malcolm Voss. There it was again. Old sin, knocking twice. Send copies to Detective Harlan, I said. Badge number is on the card I'm about to read you. Arthur, what the hell is going on? I looked at my son, then my daughter-in-law, then the garage door beyond the kitchen, still closed like a mouth holding a secret. I think, I said, my past has started collecting interest. I hung up. Melissa spoke first, not Daniel. Of course not. Arthur, whatever you think you know. I know Dr. Malcolm Voss. Her face tightened. Daniel whispered, Dad, I turned to him. You told her. He did not answer. I did not need him to. The past entered the kitchen then. It did not look like a ghost. It looked like a doctor's signature. 29 years earlier, my son killed a man. Not murdered. Killed. There is a legal difference. There is not always a moral one. Daniel was 19. Drunk. Not falling down drunk. Worse. Confident drunk. The kind of drunk young men become when the world has not yet billed them for stupidity. He left a party near Westbridge Lake at 1:30 in the morning, driving the red Mustang I had told Evelyn we should not buy him. 3 miles from home, he hit a man named Carl Redding. Carl was 42, a mechanic, father of 2 girls, walking home along the shoulder because his own truck had broken down. Daniel hit him hard enough to throw him into a ditch. Then my son drove home. He woke me with blood on the hood and vomit on his shoes. I can still see him in the porch light, crying, shaking, saying "Dad, Dad, Dad," like the word itself could reverse time. I should have called the police. That is the clean version of the story, the version decent men tell when the crime is hypothetical. I did not call the police. I drove back with him. I found Carl Redding dead in the ditch, and in that ditch, beside that broken man, with my son sobbing into his hands, I made the decision that turned me into someone else. I called Malcolm Voss first. Malcolm was county medical examiner then. Brilliant. Bent. The kind of man who believed everyone had a price because he had spent so many years naming his own. He owed me. I had looked away from some missing pills in a prior case because the overdose victim was already dead and Malcolm's career still had uses. That is how corruption works. Not as one big bargain. As small favors stacked into a staircase down, Malcolm came. So did a tow operator I knew. So did a deputy whose gambling debts I had once helped disappear. By sunrise, Carl Redding's death was no longer a hit and run. It became exposure after a fall. Drunk pedestrian. Cold night. Tragic. Clean enough. Daniel went to college 2 weeks later. Carl Redding's daughters grew up without their father. Evelyn knew. Not everything. Enough. She never looked at Daniel the same way. She never looked at me the same way either. That was the first death in our family. Carl Redding was the second. My marriage survived, technically. People mistake survival for mercy. It was not mercy. It was sentence. Evelyn stayed because she loved our son. She slept beside me because habit is stronger than disgust when people are old enough to own a mortgage. But something in her moved out that night and never came home. Daniel learned the wrong lesson. He did not learn that his father loved him. He learned that consequences were negotiable if the right man loved you enough. That is how I raised a coward. Not by failing to discipline him when he lied about homework. By saving him from the one truth that might have made him a man. And now, 29 years later, my son had taken the old machine I built for him and turned the gears toward me. That was almost elegant. Horrible, but elegant. By 4 o'clock, Leonard Price was at my kitchen table with 2 associates, a recorder, a folder, and the expression of a man who had canceled dinner because a corpse had answered the phone. Detective Harlan returned at 5. Officer June Redding came with him. She should not have been there, not morally, maybe not procedurally. But she stood by the back door, quiet and pale, and nobody asked her to leave. At 5:30, the doorbell rang. Adult Protective Services had arrived. By then, my kitchen looked less like a home and more like a deposition with appliances. Detective Harlan stood near the sink. Officer June Redding stood by the back door, watching everyone. Leonard Price had spread the death notification documents across the table. Daniel was pacing. Melissa sat perfectly still, which told me she was no longer improvising. People who are still improvising move too much. People who have a second plan go still. Detective Harlan opened the door. A woman stepped inside carrying a leather folder and wearing a navy coat buttoned to the throat. Mid-40s, dark hair, no jewelry except a plain silver ring. She looked like someone who had learned early that softness cost extra. "I'm Marcy Redding," she said. "Adult Protective Services." The room changed. Not for them, for me. The name hit my chest like a fist. Redding, again. Carl's older daughter, 11 when he died. Old enough to remember him. Old enough to hate him for dying wrong. Old enough to carry a wound into a profession and call it service. She looked at me. Then at the hospital bracelet, still around my wrist. Then at the pill bottles. Then at the garage door, visible through the kitchen hall. Then at the documents on the table. "Mr. Grant," she said, "I understand there may be concerns about coercion, isolation, medication control, and possible fraudulent filings." Her voice was professional, too professional. The way people sound when they are holding something dangerous behind their teeth. I nodded. "There are." Melissa leaned forward. "Mrs. Redding, thank God you're here. Arthur has been deteriorating rapidly. He has fixated on an old case, and he's been making accusations that are simply not grounded in reality. Marcy did not look at Melissa. She looked at me. What old case? The kitchen went still. Melissa's eyes moved to Daniel, fast. There it was. The second plan. I understood then. Melissa had not just been trying to take my house. She had been trying to build a record, old man. Confused, paranoid, false memories. Claims he killed someone, claims family is stealing, claims he is dead. Layer by layer, she was turning the truth into a symptom. Brilliant woman. Vile, but brilliant. Daniel whispered, Mel. Melissa opened her folder. I sent your office documentation, she said to Marcy. I believe it's in the file. Arthur has repeatedly mentioned a man named Carl Redding. He claims Daniel killed him years ago and that he covered it up. Obviously, that never happened. We believe it may be part of a delusional pattern. For a moment, nobody breathed. Detective Harlan turned slowly toward me. Officer June Redding's face had gone pale. Marcy Redding finally looked at Melissa, not with confusion, not with surprise. With the kind of hatred that has waited so long, it no longer needs to raise its voice. My father's name, she said, was Carl Redding. Melissa blinked. For the first time all day, she had stepped on something she did not know was loaded. Daniel sat down. Marcy looked at me again. You were the death investigator on his case. I closed my eyes. There are old doors in a man. Some you lock, some you brick over, some you forget on purpose. Then one day your son calls the police to report you dead, and every door opens at once. Yes, I said. Officer June Redding whispered, Marcy. Marcy raised one hand, not to silence her sister, to hold herself together. She opened her folder and placed a printed intake form on the table. At the top was my name, Arthur Grant. Below it, Melissa's complaint. Subject exhibits paranoid ideation involving deceased individual Carl Redding. Claims son committed homicide and subject falsified death report. Family concerned subject is experiencing cognitive decline and may become unsafe. I read the words once. Then again. Melissa had tried to use my crime as proof I was losing my mind. There are moments when evil becomes so precise it almost earns respect. Almost, Marcy said. Mr. Grant, I'm going to ask you one question. I suggest you answer carefully, Leonard said. Arthur, do not. I raised my hand. No more lawyers between me and the dead. Marcy's voice did not shake. Was my father drunk when he died? Daniel made a broken sound. Melissa went very still. Officer June Redding stared at me with tears already forming, though she did not let them fall. I looked at the two daughters of the man I had erased, then at my son, then at the woman who had dragged them into this house by mistake. No, I said, one word. 29 years late. Marcy's face did not change. That was worse than crying. What happened? She asked. So I told her. Not everything, not yet, enough to destroy the room. Daniel hid him. I found him. I called Malcolm Voss. I helped make the death look like something it was not. A drunk pedestrian, a fall, exposure, a tragedy without a criminal. A father turned into a cautionary's tale so my son could keep his future. By the time I stopped speaking, Officer June Redding had one hand over her mouth. Marcy stood perfectly still. Melissa was watching me with a different expression now. Not fear, calculation returning. She leaned forward. Do you see? She said quietly. Everyone looked at her. She pointed at me like I was evidence. This is exactly what I mean. This is what he does. He makes these wild confessions, these impossible stories, and then he believes them. He's not safe. He's not competent. For 1 second, I saw how she thought she could still win. Arthur Grant, elderly, medicated, isolated, claiming he falsified a death 29 years ago. No hard proof in the room. Two grieving women too shocked to speak. A son with every reason to deny. A doctor's name attached to both stories, but no doctor present. Melissa had dragged the truth into the kitchen and still believed she could label it dementia before anyone photographed it. I almost admired the nerve. Almost. Then the front door opened. My grandson came home. Noah, 14 years old, tall, skinny, serious in the way children become when adults have made the house unsafe, but still expect them to do homework. He stepped into the kitchen and stopped. He saw the detective, the lawyers, the two Redding women. His father crying, his mother composed. Me at the head of the table, with a confession still warm in the air. "Grandpa," he said, "I hated every adult in that room. Even me. Especially me." Melissa stood quickly. "Noah, go upstairs." He did not move. Smart boy. Too smart. "Why are the police here again?" Again. That word hit the table. Detective Harlan turned. "When were they here before?" Melissa snapped. "He means this morning." Noah looked at her. "No, I don't." The room changed again. Children are terrible for conspiracies. They remember what adults assumed did not matter. Noah looked at me. "Grandpa, I didn't know if I should tell you." My hand tightened around the mug. "Tell me now." Melissa's voice cut hard. "Noah," he flinched, then straightened. "Good boy." "No, not boy, not anymore. Last week, Mom had a man come to the garage after you fell asleep. I thought he was a doctor. He took pictures of your pill bottles and asked where you kept your documents." Daniel turned slowly toward Melissa. "What man?" She stared at Noah. If eyes could slap, that child would have bruised. Noah swallowed. He had a gray beard. Mom called him Malcolm. There are moments when the universe stops being subtle. This was one. Detective Harlan stood. Melissa stood too. "Noah, you are confused." "I recorded it," Noah said. Silence. Beautiful. Terrible. Complete. Melissa's face emptied. Noah reached into his backpack and took out his phone. "I thought Grandpa might need it." My grandson walked to Detective Harlan and handed him the phone. Daniel whispered his son's name. Noah did not look at him. That was the coldest thing that happened that day. Not the police, not the documents, not the confession. A child deciding his father was not the safest adult in the room. Harlan played the recording, audio only. Garage hum. Melissa's voice, lower than usual, less sweet. "He sleeps hard after the white pill." Malcolm Voss, older voice. "Dry. Dose? Half at night. Whole if he's agitated. That could be a problem if anyone tests. Then don't make it a problem." Russell. Then Malcolm again. "I can certify cognitive decline. Death-related filings are harder." Melissa said, "Not death. Not yet. I need enough to move benefits and insurance when the time comes." Malcolm said, "And if he doesn't die?" Melissa laughed. Soft. "Awful. Arthur is old. People stop asking questions when old men die after falling." The recording continued. Daniel's voice appeared near the end, distant, from the kitchen. "Mel, hurry up." Not surprised, not alarmed. Just impatient. That was the sound that finally killed something in me. Not Melissa discussing my eventual death like a scheduling inconvenience. Daniel hurrying her along. Detective Harlan stopped the recording. No one spoke. No one had to. The house had confessed. Melissa sat down. Not because she wanted to. Because her legs had reached the truth before her mouth could. Daniel looked at me. I did not look back. I looked at Noah. He was staring at the floor with his jaw clenched, trying very hard not to be 14. "You did right," I said. His face broke. I didn't know what to do. No decent person ever does at first. That was for him, and for the boy Daniel used to be, and for the man I failed to become 29 years ago. Detective Harlan arrested Melissa that night. Not dramatically, no shouting, no chase. Just a pair of handcuffs, a Miranda warning, and Melissa saying, "This is ridiculous." All the way to the cruiser like ridiculous was a legal defense. Malcolm Voss disappeared for 36 hours. Then surfaced at a motel, 2 counties over with $12,000 in cash, 3 prepaid phones, and enough fraudulent certification records to ruin several families and bore several prosecutors. He talked. Men like Malcolm always talk once they realize loyalty has no pension plan. By the end of the week, the case had split into 2 separate fires. One new, one old. The new one was clean. Elder abuse, attempted fraud, forgery, conspiracy, controlled medication misuse, fraudulent death and benefit filings. Melissa at the center, Malcolm beside her, Daniel close enough to burn. The old one was not clean. Carl Redding, a dead mechanic, 2 daughters, a false report, a medical examiner's signature, a deputy long retired, a tow operator dead of liver failure, and me, Arthur Grant. Respected death investigator, widower, father, criminal. The county reopened the case quietly at first. Then not quietly. Local news got my name by the 3rd day. Former death investigator confesses to cover-up in 1995 hit and run. They used my old badge photo. I looked younger in it. Worse, I looked trustworthy. Reporters parked across the street. Mrs. Palmer closed her curtains for the first time in 30 years. I did not blame her. The worst thing about public disgrace is not that strangers judge you. It is that sometimes they are right. Daniel came to see me on the 5th day. Detective Harlan had told him not to contact me without counsel. Daniel came anyway. That was the first brave thing he had done in years, and naturally it was stupid. He stood on the porch in the rain. I opened the door but left the chain on. Small detail. Important one. "Dad," he said. His face was wrecked. No sleep, no wife, no son speaking to him, no dead father to inherit from. Consequences had finally moved into his house and brought luggage. "I didn't know she was drugging you," he said. "No. I didn't know about the death filing until after. No. I didn't want you dead." That one took me a moment. I believed him. That was the terrible part. Daniel had not wanted me dead. He had simply wanted every benefit of my death without the inconvenience of admitting it. "I believe you," I said. Hope flickered. "Poor fool. You wanted me gone." His face crumpled. "Dad, garage, facility, benefits, insurance, estate review. Pick a word if gone feels unfair," he cried. Rain ran down his face with the tears until they became one thing. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "You should be." "I ruined everything." "No," I said. "I started that." He stared at me. I opened the door as far as the chain allowed. That metal line between us looked honest. "I saved you from Carl Redding. I thought I was protecting my son. What I really did was teach you that truth was something a father could move out of the way if he loved you enough." Daniel shook his head hard. "No. I made my own choices." "Yes," I said. "Eventually. But I gave you your first map." He covered his mouth. I had waited 29 years to say that. It did not feel good. Truth rarely feels good when it arrives late. "Are they going to charge you?" he asked. "Yes." His eyes widened. "You're 73. That does not make Carl Redding less dead." He leaned toward the door. "Dad, let me help." I almost laughed. Not cruelly, sadly. "You are the fire, Daniel. Stop offering water." He flinched. "Good." Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the recording. "Did you tell Melissa about Carl?" He looked away. There it was. "Yes." "When?" His voice dropped. "After Mom died." "Why?" "She found some old paperwork," she kept asking. "I was drunk. We were fighting. I wanted her to understand why you always looked at me like that." "Like what?" He looked at me. "Like you loved me and hated what loving me cost." That one struck deep, because it was true, not all true. "Enough. Go home," I said. "I don't have one." I looked past him at the rain, at the driveway where he used to draw chalk roads, at the maple tree, at the world continuing. That is also true. I closed the door. The chain rattled softly. A small sound. A final sound. Noah stayed with my sister Ruth for the first month. Ruth was 76, mean as black coffee, and exactly the kind of woman a wounded boy needed because she did not allow self-pity unless it was scheduled and accompanied by chores. He called me every night. At first he asked about the case, then about school, then about nothing. The nothing calls were my favorite. One evening he said, "Grandpa, did you really do it?" I was sitting in Evelyn's chair. The garage bed had been removed, the kitchen door unlocked. The pill bottles were in a cabinet with my name on them, and nobody else's hands touching them. "Yes," I said. He was quiet. "Why?" That was the question children ask. Because adults have not yet trained them to prefer explanations. Because your father was 19 and crying, and I loved him more than I loved the another silence. Then Noah said, "Was that wrong?" "Yes, even though he was your son, especially because he was my son." He breathed through the phone. Young breath, hurt breath. Learning the world is worse than promised breath. "Am I supposed to hate you?" "No," I said. "You're supposed to decide what the truth does to what you feel. No one gets to decide that for you. Not even me," he cried quietly. I listened. "There are debts you cannot pay, but you can stop pretending the bill is unfair." Melissa took a plea before trial. Of course she did. People like Melissa love control too much to risk a jury. She gave Malcolm everything. Gave Daniel enough. Tried to give me more, but the prosecutors already had my confession and did not need her imagination. She received 4 years. Malcolm received 7, partly for me. partly for a dozen other old people whose families had found his signature useful. Daniel received probation and a felony record for fraud-related filings and failure to report elder abuse. That sounds light. It was not. Prison would have made him tragic. Probation made him visible. Everyone in town knew. His employer fired him. His friends stopped answering. His son stayed polite and distant. He became a man who had to introduce himself after what he had done. That is its own kind of sentence. Mine came later. The old case could not be prosecuted the way it deserved. Too much time. Too many dead witnesses. Too many broken chains of evidence I had personally broken. But there were still charges they could bring. Official misconduct, obstruction, tampering. I pled guilty. The judge was younger than the crime. That bothered me more than I expected. She looked at me over the bench and said, "Mr. Grant, your age does not erase the arrogance of what you did." I said, "No, Your Honor." She said, "You used your position to decide whose life mattered." I said, "Yes, Your Honor." She said, "And you call this confession remorse?" I looked at Marcy Redding in the front row. Then at June. One wore civilian black. One wore a uniform. Both had their father's eyes. "No," I said. "I call it late. The judge sentenced me to house arrest, community service, fines, and a permanent loss of pension benefits tied to county service. My attorney called it merciful. The Redding sisters did not. They were right. Outside the courthouse, Marcy Redding handed me a plastic evidence sleeve. Inside was a child's drawing, purple house, green tree, 3 stick figures, a man, a woman, and 2 little girls. On the back, in purple crayon, were 4 words, "Come home safe, Daddy." "My sister drew that for him the morning he died," Marcy said. I looked at June. She stood behind her sister in uniform, face dry, eyes ruined. "I don't want it," I said. Marcy's face did not move. "I know." She pushed it into my hands anyway. "My mother died thinking he got drunk and froze in a ditch. June became a cop because she thought someone should have saved him from himself. I spent half my life angry at a dead man for leaving us." She stepped closer. "You didn't just hide what your son did, Mr. Grant. You made 2 little girls hate their father for dying wrong. There are sentences no man should survive unchanged. That was one." "I'm sorry," I said. "No," Marcy said. "You're exposed. That's not the same thing." Then she walked away. June stayed a moment longer. The young officer who had knocked on my garage door, the girl whose father I had turned into paperwork. She looked at me and said, "When your son reported you dead, I felt sorry for you." Her voice did not shake. "I don't anymore." Then she followed her sister down the courthouse steps. I stood there with the drawing in my hands. For 29 years, I had thought the worst thing I did was save my son. I was wrong. The worst thing I did was teach 2 daughters to grieve the wrong man. I sold the house 6 months later, not because Daniel wanted it, not because Melissa failed to get it, because I could no longer sit in that kitchen and pretend the walls only remembered what happened to me. They remembered what I had done too. Evelyn's maple tree stayed. Noah took a cutting from it before the sale. Ruth helped him plant it in her yard. He said, maybe someday he would plant another one somewhere better. I told him that was how families should work. Take the living part, leave the rot. Before the sale closed, Daniel came one last time. No rain that day, no drama. Just a gray afternoon and a man standing on the porch of a house he had lost twice. I opened the door, no chain this time. The house was mostly empty. Rooms echo differently when furniture is gone. They stop lying about being home. Daniel held an envelope. I wrote everything down, he said. What everything? Carl, Melissa, the garage, what I knew, what I didn't, what I let happen. He looked smaller, not weaker. Smaller in the way truth reduces a man to his actual size. I gave a copy to my lawyer, one to Noah for when he's older. This one is for you. I took it. Why? Because I keep saying I'm sorry, and it keeps sounding like I'm asking for something. Smart. Late. But smart. This isn't asking, he said. It's just record. I looked at the envelope. Grant men had always been good at records, terrible at truth. Maybe the two were finally meeting. Are you sober? I asked. He nodded. 4 months. Stay that way. I'm trying. Good. Try without applause. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he looked past me into the empty house. Do you still love me? There it was. The oldest trap, the saddest one, the easiest one to answer wrong. Yes, I said. His face broke with relief. I let him have 3 seconds. Then I said, but love is not access. The relief died. He nodded. That was progress, painful progress, the only kind we had left. Noah visited me after I moved into the small apartment across town. Not a facility, not a garage, a second-floor place with wide windows, bad plumbing, and a neighbor who played piano badly every Tuesday night. I liked it. Bad piano is honest. Noah brought sandwiches and homework and news about school. Sometimes he talked about Daniel. Sometimes he did not. I never asked first. One evening, he found the old framed photo of Evelyn on my shelf. Grandma knew, didn't she? Yes. About Dad? Yes. About you. I looked at him. Yes. He nodded. Did she forgive you? I thought about Evelyn, her hands, her silence, the way she had stayed but never fully returned. I think she loved me, I said. That is not the same question. Noah accepted that. Children who survive adults learn precision. On the 1-year anniversary of the police knocking on my garage door, Detective Harlan called. Malcolm Voss had given one final interview before sentencing in another county. In it, he mentioned a storage unit. In that storage unit, investigators found copies of old death files, including Carl Redding's original photographs. The real ones, the ones I thought had been destroyed. Harlan asked if I wanted to know. I said yes. He told me there was one photograph of Carl's wallet. Inside it was the same folded drawing Marcy had given me. Purple house, green tree, 3 stick figures. Come home safe, Daddy. I thanked Harlan, hung up, sat at my kitchen table in the apartment, and for the first time in 29 years, I cried for Carl Redding without also crying for myself. That was not redemption. Do not cheapen it. Redemption is a word people use when they want the story to end cleaner than the life. This was grief arriving late with proper identification. That night Daniel called. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. Dad? Yes. I just wanted to hear your voice. I looked out the window, across the parking lot, at nothing. You have, I said. Silence, then quietly. Can I call again next week? Yes. Okay. He waited. I waited. Old habits stood between us, begging to be mistaken for love. I did not invite him over. He did not ask. That was the closest thing to healing we had managed. After we hung up, I opened my notebook. House arrest required certain logs, medication, appointments, service hours. I kept another log no court had ordered. Names: Carl Redding, Marcy Redding, June Redding, Evelyn Grant, Noah Grant, Daniel Grant, Arthur Grant. Not as victims and guilty men, not as family and strangers, as people the truth had touched, late or early, gently or like a blade. At the bottom of the page, I wrote one sentence. My son called the police to report me dead while I was sitting in his garage. Then I crossed out dead. I wrote erased. That was more accurate. Daniel tried to erase me because I had once erased a man for him. Melissa tried to profit from the blank space. Malcolm tried to sell the ink. And I, old fool that I was, had mistaken survival for innocence until my own blood used my lessons against me. People ask, sometimes, whether I am glad the truth came out. That is a stupid question. Truth is not medicine. It does not care if you are cured. Truth is a door opening in a room you have kept locked for decades. Sometimes fresh air comes in. Sometimes everyone finally sees the body. Usually both. I lost my house, my pension, my name in the county, my son, at least the version of him I had protected into uselessness. I kept my grandson. Not fully. Children are never kept. They visit, they grow, they decide. But Noah still comes on Saturdays. He brings sandwiches. He lets me win at cards less often now. He asks hard questions, I answer them. That is the only inheritance I have left worth giving him. On the last Saturday of summer, he looked at me over a hand of gin rummy and said, Grandpa, do you think Dad will ever be good? I studied my cards. 2 queens, 1 7, nothing that would save me. I think, I said, your father may become honest if he gets tired enough of being sorry. Noah thought about that. Are you honest now? Fair question. Brutal child. I'm practicing. He nodded. Then beat me by 12 points. Evelyn would have liked that. I live alone now, not abandoned. Alone. There is dignity in the difference. My apartment has no garage. I checked before signing. The coffee mugs are ceramic. My pills sit in a cabinet I opened myself. My death has not been reported again, which at my age counts as a productive year. Sometimes I wake before dawn and hear the old garage door in my head, that metallic rattle, that cold floor, that first knock, police department. I used to think that was the morning my son betrayed me. It was not. My son betrayed me years earlier, on the night I taught him that a dead man could be turned into paperwork if the right people loved the wrong person enough. The garage was not the beginning, it was the bill, and when the bill came, it had my name on it. Not Daniel's, not Melissa's, mine. So here is the truth, since I have made such a long habit of arriving late to it. My son tried to bury me on paper. My daughter-in-law tried to spend the estate before the body cooled. A crooked doctor signed forms over a pulse he never checked, and I survived all of it. But survival is not the same as victory. The terrible part was not that Daniel learned how to erase a man. The terrible part was that I was the one who taught him. My son called the police to report me dead while I was sitting in his garage. Everyone thought that was the betrayal. It wasn't. It was the invoice. And my name had been on it for 29 years.